pass us over now to Travis Damgaard from LMS365, who's going to kick off his presentation with a question, which is what we like at the webinars. Travis, over to you.
Thanks, Don. Great to be here. Great to see all the lovely participants ticking in. And for all of you out there, as Don mentioned, it's always a great way to start off with a question. I do a lot of these sessions, and every time I am learning something about what kind of challenges are out there and what kind of solutions are out there. So today's question is then for you guys, and that is, what are you doing currently? What's your strategy at the moment to engage learners while delivering virtual instructor-led training?
It's a great question, and I'm really looking forward to the answers. Please put them in that big box underneath the slide with the question on. What are you doing to engage your learners in virtual instructor-led training? I can see people are typing. It's always an exciting moment, Travis. We're waiting for the answers to come through, a bit like election night. Christoph says, intro and breaking ice. Coffee mug challenge. You're going to have to help me with what the coffee mug challenge is, Christoph. I have no idea. I did once ask people in Sweden what hot beverage they liked. And I tell you, for the Swedes, it was an absolutely fabulous icebreaker. We spent 5 minutes discussing what sort of hot things people like to drink. Interactive icebreakers, says Marie, just like you did, getting them involved from the get-go. Yeah, I do think getting people involved from the start is so important. Scenarios, says Jennifer, asking questions. Christina, whiteboards, breakouts, digital games, says Jack. Who has the best coffee cup? Thank you, Christoph. Okay. Okay. So look, Travis, a lot of ideas coming through.
Yeah.
And they're sort of varying slightly, I think, between the getting people's attention, icebreaker, making people feel relaxed, and also tools you can use to actually engage people in an activity together, breakouts, whiteboards, and so on. Don't allow much time without encouraging interactivity, says Madeline. So there's two, for me, I'm reading two different types of story. Is that what you're expecting, Travis?
Yeah, these kind of ideas are fantastic. I'm seeing Kahoot being used more and more. And it's always just fun to see, the non-digital solutions of showing your coffee mug versus the product-oriented solutions. And I think it's fantastic that there's room for both of those in this answer.
Wim says use Slido. Do you have any opinions about keeping people within an environment and moving outside the environment?
I'm not familiar with Slido.
Well, Slido's it's like a lot of these tools where you go and you answer a poll online somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily within the we have a poll system within Adobe, but this is outside the system. So do you have any ideas about whether it's a good idea to have people going outside a system or coming back into it for engagement?
Well, I think something that that's dangerous in having people go outside the system is getting them back in again.
Okay, sorry, Lisa's just corrected me. You can embed Slido within Teams. Thank you, Lisa. There we go.
There we go. And we're seeing more and more of that, right? More apps that are being included within the Teams environment, and there's only going to be more and more of that as well. But in general, I mean, breaking out of the environment that you're in 95% of your time might not be a bad idea every once in a while, right? To mix things up.
Yeah, I think so. Katie, interesting, says meet them face to face first.
Yeah.
Not always possible, but if it is possible, yeah, absolutely great. Rosanna's saying using Second Life. Rosanna, if you've got any more about that, because we're going to jump out of this in a minute and go to a different layout. So this chat window is going to disappear. But if you could put in how you're using Second Life into the general chat, I'd be really interested in hearing more about that. Miro, also mentioned by Rosanna, of course, is one of these tools that a lot of people are using. My coffee cup, I'm afraid, is extremely dull, so I fail the coffee cup. It's difficult to imagine a more bland coffee cup than that one. So
I'm spicing it a little bit up, but it's not overly interesting.
Developing the team so they're just living in front of the camera most of the time. I like that one. Okay, I can see Antonio's typing. If anything else comes into the box in the next 5 seconds, we'll go with that. And then we're going to move on to the rest of the presentation. I'm liking what Madeline says as well. Start small with engagement and then build up. Immersive communication environments. Antonio, we're going to go over to a different layout now, but I'd like to know if you've got anything more to say about those environments, because it sounds very interesting. Like there's a lot there. Okay, I'm going to move to sharing Travis's screen now. So Rosanna, I can see you're typing. If you could type in switch over to the general chat, that would be great. Testing to some special meeting, not special. Not sure I quite understand that one. Travis, okay, we've got an idea of what people are doing right now to encourage engagement. I have to say, we've done webinars like this in the past quite a lot. I think people are doing much more sophisticated stuff and also much more open to engagement.
Yeah.
But I'm going to drop my camera now, give you the stage. What else is there that we could be doing?
Perfect. Thanks for the fantastic warm-up, as always, Don. And I think that what we should be looking at in my presentation is not potentially alternatives to those ideas that everyone came with, but tools that could support them. And also, there's some great ideas in there of using other tools, and those I think those are fantastic as well to add those Miro and Slido, which I've never seen before, into virtual instructor-led training. But what we're going to be talking about today is what is built in with Teams from the very beginning, and specifically giving some tips at the very beginning here for virtual instructor-led training, and what kind of features are there currently within Teams. Some of these have been here for a while, some are relatively new, some have just been changing names over time, but it's good to run through them and remind ourselves, what they can do, where they are, how to use them, how to access them. Because personally, I find oftentimes that it's in the heat of the moment when I want to use one of these, and if I'm not aware of where things are and how to access them, it can be a little bit of a sticky situation. So that's the first section of today, is talking about virtual instructor-led training, because that engagement within a virtual environment is just really hard for everybody to maintain. So that's what we're going to be looking at first. Secondly, we're going to look at Microsoft Viva and see what can that add to learning within Teams. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about where I work, which is LMS365, as an addition, something else that you can add into the Teams environment. But for the first two steps, this is going to be 100% focused on what you probably already have access to today, and what you can then go away with and start using already this morning if you want to. So the first of these are polls. And of course, there's several apps that are being built into Teams, but this is the Microsoft native version of creating a poll within a meeting. And like I said, I'm sort of a spur of the moment kind of guy. I don't prepare too much in advance, but when I am my best self, I do try to prepare in advance as much as possible. And we're going to talk through how you can do that with polls. So if you have an existing appointment that you're going to be delivering, a virtual instructor-led training session that you're wanting to add a poll to, you can do that in advance by going into your Teams calendar and selecting the meeting, and then clicking on the chat. And when you're within the chat, I actually skipped a screenshot. There's a ton of screenshots that we're going to run through, so I tried to compromise a little bit. When you go into the chat, there's the ability to see tabs at the top, and there's a little plus button. And that's where you can add apps. Sounds like some of you guys are already familiar with adding apps, but for those of you who are not, that's where you can then add functionality into a meeting, such as a poll. And a poll has been called Forms. I believe they're actually rebranding the name to be called Polls when you're looking for it in here. But if you just search in the search bar for Forms, that will come up. And you're going to need to add this into your meeting. And you do that just by clicking on the Add button. You can, of course, read through all of the small print if you want to, and this is just showing what languages are supported and what the use cases are for this. But from our perspective, for this instructor-led scenario, we're going to be using this as a poll to trying to engage the audience, very similar to what Don did with asking the question. So now we've added it, and here you can see that little plus button. That's what the initial step was. But now we have it added as a tab into this chat, and we're able to see all polls. You might have created one in advance, so you'd be able to see it here, or you can create a new one. And when you create a new one, you are given then at this point 4 options. I haven't taken the time to create a new screenshot, but there is a fourth format that's available now. These are the 3 main ones that are still most commonly used, which is a multiple choice, a quiz, which is honestly simply a multiple choice, but with correct and incorrect answers, and then this thing called a word cloud, which is a open text response. And also they give you a bunch of ideas. So if you're trying to come up with an idea of how to engage your audience, then you can always scroll through these and just grab one of the pre-existing polls, which is a real simple way of getting that in there. So in this case, we chose to do one of each of those 3 that we saw, and this is still in a draft format, so we haven't published this or anything. Nobody's got access to it. And what we've done here is we've created a multiple choice poll around the color of the sky. In which case we're not, pushing our ideas on anybody. They can answer whatever they want to. Then we've got a quiz where we are saying that there is a correct answer to the color of the sky, and then we have this free text answer, or question rather, where you can put in an answer of what color the sky would be in your perfect world and explain your answer. So these are just some samples that I put together here. And once you then send them live, then this is what it looks like to you as the editor of them being live, as well as how your meeting participants can access them. So if you send this out, you could send this prior to a meeting and send it live, and that would pop up into the chat here. You can see this chat called Team Meeting, which is where these questions are live, so that in advance of a meeting, you could have the ability to put in your answers. Where, for me, I did a quiz saying that it's blue, but I would prefer that it was green, for instance. And as answers come in, you decide then whether or not you're sharing results. So in this case, we've said that we do want to share results. We don't care who it is that has answered it, but we want to see what the responses are. And here in the free text, this is run through some AI, which will then pull out specific words and highlight commonalities and things that would have been answered multiple times by different individuals. This is what it looks like during the meeting. So there's a really good looking instructor who's presenting some stuff. And in this case, you could say that now in the middle of my presentation, I'm going to be opening up this poll. And you would do that then as an instructor by clicking on the polls icon. And then you'd just be able to publish then those polls that you had presented previously. And this is then where those would be shown. It's actually not in the chat itself, but has its own independent icon where you can then access this stuff. And same thing, we're still being able to see the response, as well as some AI generated suggestions based on that open text request. So this is one of the great ways to spice things up a little bit and get some interaction. This next feature has been around now, I think, for about 3 months, and was really a welcome addition to me personally. And it's really simple. You don't need to do anything in order to enable this, but just to make you aware that it is here, because sometimes in the heat of battle, you might not notice some of these things. And this is a very simple feature that's amazing that it wasn't there from the very beginning, but this is simply putting the raised hands in a chronological order so that you're able then to view who is next in line to give their input or answer a question or whatever the use case might be. So here we're seeing this in an example where, as a presenter, we're using this presenter mode, seeing our PowerPoints, and then simultaneously able to see the responses or the raised hands from our team members. Another one, which is a oldie but goodie, is breakout rooms, and this is something which perhaps you can recall this, Don, but I think for the first 2 webinar sessions that we were doing. This was when are breakout rooms coming? When are breakout rooms coming?
It
And they're here.
dominated. It dominated those early webinars, Travis. That's the
It
only
did.
question people had. Go on.
It did. And they're here now, right? And not that it's any big news, but it's still a good reminder of how do we make use of these and how can you prepare prior to a meeting to use them. So here we're in, again, this team meeting. And how did we get to this area? We did this by going to the calendar and double clicking on the meeting, essentially. And that brings us into this details, where we've got a number of different tabs up here, including breakout rooms. So this is allowing you in advance to prepare for your breakout rooms. And when you click here, you're able to then create the breakout rooms in advance and decide how many rooms do you want. Now we've created these rooms, and then you can see we've got these three dots up here, the ellipses, that will give us access to some additional features. And firstly, we're going to give it a name. So in this case, we're doing some brainstorms. We've got a product brainstorm and a service brainstorm. And then we're able to decide how we want the participants to be assigned to the different rooms. That can be done automatically, where it's just randomized who goes where, or you could choose a manual method and go through and select those users who are then interested in who you think is a good fit for where. And you do that simply by checking the boxes and then reaching up here and changing your room during that dropdown. And here, there's that excellent instructor again. And looking at now, instead of the polls, we're looking at the rooms, and we can see those rooms. We can see that they're closed, they're prepared, we've got people assigned to them, and then we can simply open those rooms. Just going to pause here because something that has been a thorn in many people's sides is who can manage these breakout rooms. And the methodology within Teams is that it is the organizer, the meeting organizer, the person who has created the booking of the meeting, that has the ability to do this. As of I think about a month and a half, there's been this role of co-organizer. And that is the way that you can then give the same level of management to your colleagues, so that you could, as the organizer, book the meeting, arrange everything, and then change another instructor who might be delivering the content to be that co-organizer, so that they can make use of this management stuff. But here I am, I'm the organizer. I've got this view where I can open that up. What I can also do as the organizer is I can create a room manager. So this is like a different level of permissions to a co-organizer. The co-organizer has control over all rooms, but you can assign a what it would be a presenter. So not an external guest, but a presenter who would be able to manage an individual room. Also, we're able to set time limits. So this would then basically take care of timing for you. So you could say that we're going to have these rooms open for 15 minutes, and then we're automatically going to shut them down and pull people back in. So it's a good way of setting that in. Or you could decide whether or not you want to allow people to jump out and in as they please.
Travis, I've got a couple. While we're still on this business of meeting rooms and so on,
Yes.
and can I just put in? We've got 3 questions that have come through. I'd just like to quickly
Sure.
fire them at you while it's still hot, because we can probably deal with them quite quickly. Christoph says, a feature I like a lot in Zoom is that participants can self-select for a range of breakout rooms. You can choose which room you go to. Do you know if that's going to be available in Teams anytime?
I don't know.
No.
I know that's not currently an option.
Yeah.
But
You
whether
don't
or
work for
not
Microsoft, we should be clear. So you don't
yeah.
have vision of the roadmap.
No, but there's a Teams blog, which is something that I follow religiously, and that's where you can see all new features that are released. So I can dig out some links for that later on and share that in the chat. as of my understanding, it's not something that's on the roadmap for a quick fix.
I've got the Teams blog URL. I'm going to drop that into the chat so people can find that. Okay, good.
Perfect.
That's one. Faye says, have Microsoft introduced the functionality to manage breakout rooms if you're not the owner of the meeting? I think you've just answered that. You can have co-owners. Is that right?
Yeah, it's called a co-organizer. Correct.
Co-organizer. Okay.
Yes.
Rosanna is saying, polls/forms, are they different from Q&A in Teams meetings? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to understand a little bit more by what she means with Q&A, but
Yeah.
it's referred to as polls based on the forms.
Okay. Katie is saying it's not on the roadmap, but channel meetings and breakout rooms are on the roadmap, I think.
Okay.
Katie's saying. Thank you for that. And Daniel is saying, we've had trouble when groups have been invited to a meeting. It seems, and this is always and it's something that's come up in the past, it seems you can't make anyone who hasn't been invited by name a co-organizer. That's really quite specific. Would love that feature. Daniel, yeah, I don't know that Travis is able to feed that through to Microsoft, but it does sound like a useful feature to have.
For sure.
And James asks, are we, from Lauren Hall, Lauren asked, and James put it over in the question box. Thank you, James. Are we able to add people that dial in on phones to breakout rooms?
Ah, that's a very specific question. I'm gonna have to plead ignorance on that.
Yeah, you've got a lot of very specific stuff coming your way here. It's a sign of the sophistication of the use of the tool.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very different questions than what we were getting a year ago, for sure. And it's
people have
great.
moved on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Katie says, and this is a true fact for all tools, not just Teams, Q&A is a good feature, but people default to the chat normally. And that's just a general fact of these tools, isn't it? Travis, okay, I think we've covered off the questions for now. Please do keep them coming. And we have got a section at the end for Q&A, but I just thought while we were on rooms, we should deal with that. Travis, back to you.
All right. So that was breakout rooms. This is also another oldie but a goodie, and this is something that is kind of buried but very useful when you are working with multinational teams where people might be, native speakers of different languages, and this is the ability to do live captioning. So basically, you simply need to turn on live captions, and this is what is accessible via this more ellipse button. We can see down here that we can turn on live captions, and that actually enables your users to change the language as well and see this in their own native language as long as that language is supported by Teams. That's a very quick, short one. And in the same category of that, we have live transcription, which is connected to recording. So the difference here is that we're not just doing live transcription and captioning, but we're recording this alongside the actual meeting itself, and this will then categorize who has said what and give you then access to that either via the Microsoft Teams details, or also if you guys are publishing this to Microsoft Stream, which is the corporate Microsoft version of YouTube, you can also then see all of the transcripts there. And for some people, they might prefer to read through a meeting that they missed as opposed to viewing it. And where can you find all that stuff? Again, this is being pulled up in the actual Teams meeting itself via the Teams calendar, where you can come in here and you can access details and see, for instance, a recording. You can see attendance for who joined when and how long were they there, and also access the transcripts in there. So now we're getting to presenter mode, and what is constantly being changed and also rebranded a bit is this presenter mode. So what you're able to do here is simply overlay your face on top of what you are presenting. And the way that this is done is either when you're getting ready to start presenting, you can choose based on these different options which one you want to take. So we've got different names for all of them, and we'll run through them. But Also, while you are presenting, then you probably have noticed that there's the option at the top of your presenter bar to switch or enable them while you're actually in the middle of presenting. So I have to admit that I'm not really great on what each of these modes are called, but I can show you what they look like. This one is basically just overlaying a cutout of myself on top of the presentation that I'm giving. And again, this is any kind of screen sharing that you're doing. So it doesn't need to be within in PowerPoint. It could just be basic screen sharing like what we're doing right now. This is going to put me on the side of my presentation. And of course, this will make it where the presentation itself is made smaller. And here we go, still smaller presentation, but gigantic Travis. So it all depends on what you're trying to do. But my personal opinion, whenever I use this, I do feel that there is more engagement with the audience if they can see my face while I'm presenting, as opposed to just having a PowerPoint that's running with no eye contact. That's really what it's all about to me. And of course, here I'm unable to see them, but they're able to see me. And where this really works well is by combining it with PowerPoint and using what's called PowerPoint Live. This is basically only available if you're using PowerPoint, but what it's doing is enabling you as the presenter to get all of the benefits of those presentation modes, where your learners are able to have, eye contact with you, but you're also able to see them. That to me is the biggest benefit of this, because we can see on the right-hand part of the screen, we've got Serena and Rita and Ray and Danielle. They all have their cameras on. I can see, am I losing them? Are they engaged? Does somebody have, poised to ask a question? Those kind of things, which you oftentimes, or at least traditionally, have lost in the virtual sessions that we're all running so often nowadays. Another benefit is that we've got the ability to enable our learners to change from slide to slide. So let's say that they saw something interesting in the previous presentation. We can see down here this navigation that allows them to go backwards and forwards actually within your presentation. And I think in my next slide, here they also have the ability to translate slides. So this would allow for those multinational scenarios where somebody's wanting to see this in Chinese or in German or whatever, the ability to have that text translated automatically for them so that they can read it in their native language. And how we do this, just to jump back for those of you that might not be familiar with it, how you do that is when you are preparing to share, instead of choosing your screen or your window, you simply need to go down here and you need to select your PowerPoint from this list. And by default, this is going to show the PowerPoint presentations that you have last opened up, but you can also load up a new presentation to that specific meeting. All right, sorry for skipping around a little bit, but that's the last feature that we're going to be talking about in terms of instructor-led training and the built-in features there. I hope that portion of the conversation was useful, and of course continue to ask any specific questions, which I'll do my best to answer. No problem, no promise that I have all of them, but keep on the dialogue in chat, and we can talk a little bit about that at the end of the hour. But now we're moving on to another.
Travis, before we move on,
Yeah.
quick question. Could you just move your mic slightly down? We're getting a few plosives. So if you move it down towards your chin, that would be great.
Is that better?
Sounds great.
All right. So now we're talking about Viva, and specifically Viva Learning. Viva, just zooming out, Viva itself is an entire suite of products. It's an employee experience platform that has many features, such as performance development and building your intranet into Teams, these kind of things. But what we're going to be focusing on is Viva Learning, because this is a learning and skills group webinar. And we're going to talk about what is, first of all, available to you today, the free features that are included in any Microsoft 365 subscription. So these are things that you can have turned on if you're not able to find them now, but will have no cost to you. And then we're going to talk about what does the licensed version of Viva Learning offer in addition to that. So first of all, what Viva Learning offers is content. So this is a content aggregator that's pulling in disparate pieces of e-learning that your organization might have in different subscriptions, and also adding Microsoft's own content that that they can provide, such as Microsoft Learn, which is very technical content around their products like Azure and Power BI, etc. Then we have what they're calling Microsoft 365 training. And this is what is also oftentimes referred to as the learning pathways. And these are adoption training for the normal user, somebody who wants to learn how to use SharePoint or OneDrive or Teams in a normal end user scenario. And then also a big benefit is the top 125 LinkedIn Learning courses. So you're going to see all of the LinkedIn Learning courses, and a lot of those are going to have a payment gateway, but 125 of those are going to be free and accessible for all of your learners. And this is what it looks like. So here in a Teams interface, we've got all of our apps. We've got Viva Learning here on the left. And you're going to see then when you're browsing all of these learning items then separated based on the source. So we've got LinkedIn Learning here, we've got the Microsoft 365 training here. You can also add what they're calling organization-generated learning content. And this is essentially a SharePoint document library. So if you've got a document library full of important information and you're just wanting to have that searchable and surfaceable in the same area as those other learning content, then you can do that. And you can add that. So here we've got this example of the organization Contoso that has Word, PDF, and PowerPoint presentations that they are including here, such as some people and culture stuff, inclusive communication, PowerPoint presentations, etc. But these are just documents that are being discovered by Viva Learning because you've chosen that specific folder to appear here. And we've been looking at this in the browsing interface, but you can also search and then, of course, share these pieces of learning material. And this is what the search looks like. So this is just at the very top. And when we search for something, we can go into the actual content, and then we can share that. And sharing is simply going to be done via chat. You can also put the link into a channel. And this is, just sharing some learning content to your colleague or your report and allowing them access to it. And I believe that's the last part of the free version. Yes, now we're going over to the paid features. And Viva as a platform can be licensed altogether, or you can choose individual apps. And Viva Learning is one of those apps that you can also purchase individually. And what you're able to do as a paid feature, you're able to add recommendations and what could be considered progress tracking. We'll talk through why I've got some quotation marks there. So here, this is the recommendation example. So we're in that same course that we shared, but now we're recommending it. And we're doing that by clicking on this little badge up here that says recommend, and then choosing a person from the organization who we want to recommend it to, giving some context around it. And then there's this section called due date. And we'll come back to that. I would put that due date also in quotation marks. But when we click the recommend button, that's sent over to Joni. And here's why that due date would be a quotation mark from me. All of this tracking and due dates is 100% manual. And the way that is happening is if I'm Joni, this is the view from Joni. So I've received this recommendation. It was Grady that sent it over to me, or Archie, I'm not sure what his first name is. I can see it's due, and the way that I am having my progress recorded is that I need to manually click on this drop down and check that I'm either in progress or I've completed it. Then Archie, or Grady, or whatever his first name was, he has a tab internally where he can then get an overview of all of the recommendations he's sent off, as well as the manually selected progress that those people have selected. We can also then have some additional content providers. So beyond the ones that were in the free version, which, just to remind you, was Microsoft Learn, the 365 training, and then the 125 LinkedIn Learning courses. They are opening this up to a wide variety of content providers. You, of course, need to have subscriptions with those content providers, but when you do, then you're able to add them in as an option for your learners. And here we can see a list. This is ever growing, to be honest. So there's a lot of great content providers that you can then pull into the searchable interface in Viva Learning. And this is, by the way, this is what the admin section looks like. This is something that IT would have access to, and is not really a learning function. And something else to bear in mind is the context that what Viva Learning really is the Google for learning content within Teams. And what I mean by that is that when you're looking for something, you go to Google and you Google it, and you are given the results, and those results will take you somewhere else. When you click on a web page, more often than not, you will leave the Google interface, and that is also what happens most often when you're using these additional content providers within Viva Learning. So the Viva Learning is a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that Viva Learning is not. And what it is not is, it's not an LMS. It is not doing the structured learning. It's not handling enrollments. It's not handling automated progress checking and reporting, actual due dates, certifications, refreshing of certifications as they go out. All of those traditional LMS features are not what Viva Learning is. What Viva Learning is allowing for organizations that want to get all of the great content that Microsoft provides, as well as wanting to pull in a really disparate learning environment where you might have several subscriptions that are running around, and people are having a hard time finding all of those learning opportunities, pulling it all into one place. That's really, when you boil it down, that's what Viva Learning is doing. So as part of the paid version of Viva Learning, this is also then offering integration with LMSs. And what that means is that in addition to those content suppliers that you might have that are 100% optional, that you're either not too worried about following the tracking of, or that you're tracking in other ways. You might be going into each of those different content providers and going into their reporting to track. Then you can also have then the learning management system that has those business critical learning pathways and onboarding courses, which need to be tracked in one place globally, centrally. And that involves, at this point, 4 different LMSs. LMS365, where we're from, we're integrated here within Viva Learning, as is Cornerstone, Saba, and SAP SuccessFactors. So that's it. And then the question that everybody is wondering is, but how can we do more with learning in Teams? And I promise not to do a full-on demo or pitch, but I do want to communicate what it is that we do, because some of you might also be wondering that. And what LMS 365 is doing is turning your Microsoft environment into a full-fledged LMS. And that could include integration into Viva Learning, if that's the direction you're going, but it doesn't have to. It can be a standalone LMS built into Teams, as well as built into SharePoint. So within the Microsoft ecosystem, we have 3 main touch points for your learners. And who is a good fit for LMS365? That is organizations that are already using Teams a lot, might also be using SharePoint a lot, and are just in general focused on the Microsoft ecosystem and all the benefits that are already present in that ecosystem. So within SharePoint, if you have, for instance, an intranet, or if you've got different sites for different groups in the company, you might even have a learning site at this point in time. It's a great addition where you would have the full LMS interface directly in that interface that you're already using, that your users are already familiar with. They're logged into as soon as they turn on their computer, and it's just an integrated part of where they're spending time. If you're anything like me, maybe you're not spending so much time in SharePoint, but you're spending 90% of your day in Teams. It's the same story. So it's where you are, you're notified where you are, you're able to consume training where you are. And in this case, this is just a quick screenshot of this as an app, where very similar to the Viva Learning example, we have an LMS365 app. Or if you're going for Viva Learning, then it would just be able to be straight through Viva Learning as well. And then finally, not all organizations are 100% office-based. So there's a lot of first-line workers, people who are out and about, maybe not ever interacting with a PC, in which case we have mobile apps. And this is both available for iOS and for Android, from our own proprietary mobile app, as well as the ability to use the Teams mobile app to access the LMS365 app in there. So the ability to either choose, to add an additional app to your colleagues and employees' phone, or just use what's already there. Beyond that, then in terms of reporting, we're using one of the best business intelligence systems in the world, which is Power BI, which is also part of the Microsoft 365 subscription, to give you standard reports from day one that is reporting granularly across your entire business. But you can also change those. You can also build your own reports. And that's always a big part of any requirement that we talk through. So enough about me. Let's talk about you guys. If you want to, you can connect with me. That's a QR code to my LinkedIn account. This is a topic that I care a lot about, which is learning in Teams in general. So I do share stuff on a regular basis there. You can also reach out. That's my email. That's my mobile. Let me know if there's anything specifically LMS 365 related that you'd like to talk through.
And Travis has also provided a link there in the resources area on the left-hand side to a series of ebooks that LMS365 publish, which hopefully would all be useful. Of course, they're all free. So LinkedIn, contact details, everything else on the left-hand side, and quite a few questions here in the middle. Firstly, though, Travis, thanks very much. As always, a really extensive tour of what's possible. And as you say, the trick is, how do we support effective learning in this environment? Okay, so I asked you some of the questions about the breakout rooms because they were mounting up while we were speaking, and then we've got some specific stuff which you can see in the box. I feel sure that as we're chatting, more will come in. Helen, first of all, when you went through the live captioning piece, said, "Hang on, how do you choose the exact language that you want? Can you do that now? Do you have to jump back to do a screen share to do that, or can you describe it?"
I am going to pull up a link and put it in the chat, and this will give you guys some resources around that. That has the translation option in there as well. You need to, if I recall correctly, choose the spoken language. You need to select that I'm speaking English, and then that will enable then for your international folk to get back there. Where's the best place for me to put a link here, Don?
If you put it in the on the left hand side where it says resources from today's webinar, probably best if you just put it in there.
Okay.
There we go. And let's just make it clear what it is, which is, what is it? Information on live captions. Okay, live captioning. I'll put that in. Okay, good. That's one down. Thank you very much. It's like having your own little personal Google, isn't it, with Travis around? Um, Wim says, when you record a meeting, does the transcript recording happen automatically, or do you need to start that separately? So, transcript, is it built in, or do you need to start it separately?
These things have a tendency to change. To my understanding, you both need to start the recording and then turn on the transcription, but you're not able to transcribe without recording.
Okay. Right. Okay, that's worth knowing. Um, Thank you for that. Norca asks, the courses, you were going through that list of courses, talking about how it's effective like a Google for learning materials and courses and resources. Are these courses stored on Viva, or do you need to have a dedicated host?
They're not stored on Viva. And here we're going to go back to that analogy of Viva being the Google of learning. It really is. It's not a content repository. It's not an LMS. It is the place that you search for things that are stored other places. And if you're an organization, you like the document example, if you've got PDFs and Word documents, maybe some standard operating procedures that need to be searchable, then those would be in SharePoint, not in Viva, and then you would be linking to that SharePoint library. Likewise, if it were an LMS, they would be in your LMS and you'd be linking to the LMS and just having it be a searchable content source.
So the analogy is, as you say, that it's your Google. It doesn't store things. It's a search engine.
Yeah.
Rosanna asks, can we already use ScormPack in SP?
I'm thinking
SharePoint.
that's SharePoint. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my guess. No, not at
Okay.
this time.
Okay, straightforward answer. Back to well, now the questions are coming in. This always happens, of course. Starting the Q&A, so we have to get through them quickly because as soon as we get one done, another one pops in. Norca says, what if you produce the content in-house? Would you be able to upload your learning on your e-learning on LMS365?
Absolutely, and that's
Yeah.
what we do. So again, SCORM is supported in LMS 365. So that's your workaround in order to provide SCORM content within the SharePoint environment or within Teams, is by creating a course in LMS 365 and having that then accessible there.
Okay. Um,
And likewise, sorry, you can also create content in any other format you want to. If you're using video or web content or documents, that's also part of what we're doing at LMS 365 is having that form. I hesitate to call it a content creation tool, but a course creation tool that allows you to take existing content types and bundle them all together.
Very good. Great question here from Katie. We have Viva by default and an LMS. How do you manage users not being overwhelmed by having several places to find training and guidance? I think this is a bona fide question. It's not specific to 365 or to Viva, but it is a real issue for, I think, for most organizations. How do we help people not just suffer from uh, a sense they don't know where to go for stuff?
Yeah, then you would need to integrate your LMS within Viva Learning. And I'm not sure if I read that correctly, whether or not you have LMS 365, but if you do, then reach out and we can walk you through how that works. At the moment, there are only 4 LMSs that are integrated in Viva, and the goal of Viva is, of course, to combat exactly what you're asking about. So I think it will only get better, but there are options for integrating LMSs into Viva Learning so that will be the place where they go and search and find things.
Okay. And the follow-up question from Norca about this issue of uploading content. Can you bring the content in via a link? So if you produce something on another application like Rise,
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
bring it in? Yeah.
You can. Typically, when we have customers that are using Rise, they'd be exporting that as a SCORM asset and then having that be the content. But there's several different ways of approaching it.
Uli was asking, sorry about being late, and maybe the question's already been asked, but is it possible to connect Viva to a SCORM package? I think you have already answered that. Travis, anything else you want to say about it?
No, just get connected. Happy to happy to show you how via LMS 365.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it is definitely worth following Travis on LinkedIn, apart from anything else. So I'll definitely connect with him or follow him, and then you've got that place to go to when you've got all these questions which you didn't ask today. And he's very good at responding. Lisa says, how can large organizations manage users on LMS365? Is reporting possible to showcase specific divisions? And I'll expand that slightly, Travis. Is it possible to have hierarchical permissions and reporting? And what level of granularity can you go to with LMS365?
Yeah, great. So I'm gonna answer that backwards. So yes, you can absolutely have that level of granularity, and then the way that we do it is we use your existing infrastructure, your existing organizational data as it is within something called the Active Directory, and that's the back end to the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So as soon as somebody joins your organization, gets an email address, they're there, and that includes typically, name, role, geography, management structure, who's your line manager. So all of that is simply there from day one, from when we're implemented, and is one of the benefits of taking what you already have and adding on top.
Sorry, I'm trying to. I'm covering more than one thing here as things keep coming in.
I'm happy to go to the next question. That
Go
was
to it.
about uploading
yeah, that's
historic
really
course.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a typical part of our standard implementation, is then assisting with the import both of historic course completion, but also existing courses. If you're using SCORM assets, bulk imports of those. So absolutely.
On the a further question related to that, if because many people are doing LMS transitions at the moment, going from one to another, which is a real headache. When people transition into LMS 365 from another one, as well as historic course completions, is there anything else that you'd want to make people aware of that would make that transition easier?
So the question is, what does a typical transition look like, I
Yes,
guess?
and where are
And
the big stumbling blocks, and what should people be aware of?
well, the stumbling block is always internal bureaucracy, always. So I mean, if we could live in a world where the L&D manager could find the tool that they wanted to and said, let's do this, and just simply do it, that would be the life. But the stumbling blocks in any project is aligning with stakeholders, is going through legal, going through the proper IT people, because as being built into the Microsoft ecosystem, we are the IT department's friends, but oftentimes they're brought in too late, and can be a stumbling block. The actual work is very straightforward. The actual imports and creation of courses, and it's very straightforward. It's the
It's not the
working with the
technical
people.
side, it's the people.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, my good friend Andy Wooler always says you can do anything with technology, but people can stop you doing just about everything, and that's pretty much sums it up. He's got a
That's
lifetime's
right.
experience of implementing LMSs. James, a wider question here, and something I'd be very interested in discussing. Now that face-to-face is back, and believe me, last night I was at the awards for learning technologies, which may be why I've got a slightly hoarse voice this morning, and we were very much face-to-face, 900 people celebrating the industry. Face-to-face is back. Have you seen the use of Teams for training drop, or is it at the same levels, Travis?
I would say it's at the same levels, but it's
Yeah.
it's almost always hybrid now,
Yeah.
which is something that we've been doing forever, and is honestly, just to throw it out there, something that LMS 365 is incredibly good at, is managing instructor-led training, no matter what kind it is,
Mhm.
and being deeply embedded within the Outlook calendaring system, being able to book rooms and create Teams links simultaneously and send those out to your learners, so that they have the choice of being able to meet up physically or remotely, because there's my experience is there's always somebody remote. It
Yeah.
might be the minority, but it's it's created more complexity because now you need to take both audiences into account, but there's almost always going to be somebody remote.
But I completely agree. And of course, we have like, I don't know, 1 minute left, but it's a huge issue, hybrid, no question about it. In our remaining 45 seconds, Travis, what's your big solution for the hybrid issue? How do you make sure hybrid events are successful?
That's the topic of the next webinar. Tune in
Very
next
unfair
time.
of me to throw that at you. It's super difficult, isn't it? And I think
But you're
the
right.
answer
I mean,
is
I think that's
inclusion.
it.
Yeah.
I think so far since COVID, the topic of virtual instructor-led training has been so hot that I think that's it, James. You hit the next level topic on the head is what do we do about the hybrid situations? And I've got no 45-second answer for that, unfortunately.
Now, look, that is why we like people in the learning and development field, because they're not politicians. If Travis was a politician, we'd said, well, let me be clear from the start. We've spoken about this many times, and we'd had 45 seconds filled with nonsense. Instead, he says, I don't know, but certainly it's a big topic. We're going to come back in it. Right, there we are. We're at 59 minutes. It remains for me to wrap up by thanking Travis, encouraging everybody. Well, thank everybody in the room for your participation as well, which has made it really valuable. Thank you so much. I encourage everybody to click on all the links on the left-hand side, but particularly the ebook and linking with Travis, who is a genuinely generous, knowledgeable person in this field and certainly worth following and tapping into. Lisa said, thank you so much. I've got a couple of new bits to try out straight away and food for thought for the future. That's what we're trying to do. Look, we're going to wrap up now. We're going to be back, or I'm going to be back in an hour's time, 12 o'clock UK time, with our next presentation, which is confusingly not LMS365, but Learning 360. It gets terribly complicated, but there we are. Travis, great to have you joining us from Denmark, bringing us all your expertise from LMS365. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Don.
What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop the recording.